1. Intro. You don't feel out of control because life is too hard. You feel out of control because you've been trying to control things that were never yours to hold. The more you force, the more you break inside. If you're tired of overthinking, chasing peace, and still feeling restless, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers, because this lesson may change how you see your mind, your stress, and your life. 2. The relatable struggle. You wake up already thinking about what needs to be fixed. The message you haven't replied to. The version of yourself you feel you should be by now. The outcome you're trying to predict before it even happens. And without realizing it, your mind is already working overtime, trying to control how the day will unfold. You plan your words before conversations happen. You replay past moments, wishing you had said something different. You imagine future scenarios, hoping to avoid discomfort, rejection, or failure. It feels responsible. It feels like you're staying ahead. But slowly, it starts to drain you. Because no matter how much you think, you can't fully control how people respond. You can't guarantee how situations will turn out. And you definitely can't predict every twist life brings. So you try harder. You double-check everything. You hesitate before making decisions. You hold back parts of yourself just to avoid possible regret. And the more you try to secure everything, the more fragile everything starts to feel. Even small things begin to weigh on you. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A small mistake feels like failure. A moment of silence feels like something is wrong. It's not that you're weak. It's that your mind has been trained to hold on too tightly. You've been taught that control equals safety. That if you just think a little more, plan a little better, you can finally relax. But instead, you end up carrying everything, all the time. And that constant pressure to get it right, to avoid mistakes, to keep everything together, becomes exhausting in ways you can't always explain. 3. The Stoic frame. The Stoics looked at human suffering with unusual clarity. They understood that much of our distress does not come from life itself, but from the invisible demands we place on life. We want events to go our way. We want people to act according to our expectations. We want certainty in a world that has never promised it. And this is where the Stoic frame begins. It starts with a simple but deeply unsettling distinction. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. Your effort is yours. Your choices are yours. Your discipline, your attitude, your words, your response in this moment, those belong to you. But outcomes do not. Other people's opinions do not. Timing does not. The past does not. And the future, no matter how many times you rehearse it in your mind, still refuses to fully obey you. This idea is not passive. It is not about giving up, becoming cold, or pretending not to care. The Stoics were not teaching indifference to life. They were teaching accuracy. They were saying, stop spending your strength on what was never in your hands. Because when you confuse influence with control, you suffer twice. First, from the event itself. Then from the frustration of failing to master what was never yours to command. The Stoic frame asks you to return to what is real. Not fantasy, not fear, not imagined control. It asks, what can I actually do here? What is mine to carry? What must I release, even if I do not like it? That shift changes everything. Instead of trying to control whether you are liked, you focus on being honest and steady. Instead of trying to control whether life feels fair, You focus on meeting it with character. Instead of trying to control the entire path, you take responsibility for the next step. This is why Stoicism feels so grounding. It does not promise a painless life. It offers something more credible, a stable inner posture inside an unstable world. Not perfect peace, not total certainty, but a way to stop fighting reality and start standing firmly within it. 4. The reversal insight. Here is the reversal that changes the entire way you look at stress. The problem is not that life gives you too little control. The problem is that your mind keeps demanding control from places where control was never available. That is a painful insight, because most people spend years believing the opposite. They think peace will come when everything finally lines up, when the relationship feels secure, when the career becomes stable, when people understand them, when the future looks predictable. Until then, they keep reaching, adjusting, managing, and mentally rehearsing. But that strategy creates the very tension it is trying to solve. The more attached you become to controlling outcomes, the more fragile your inner world becomes. Every delay feels personal. Every disagreement feels threatening. Every unexpected turn feels like proof that something is going wrong. Not because the event itself is always devastating, but because your peace was secretly tied to how the event turned out. That is the trap. You were never only reacting to life. You were reacting to the gap between life and your demand that life obey you. And once you see that, something important becomes clear. Your suffering is often intensified not by reality, but by resistance. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to imperfection. Resistance to the fact that other people have minds, choices, moods, and priorities that do not revolve around your comfort. This is why two people can face the same situation and feel it differently. One experiences inconvenience, the other experiences collapse. The difference is often not the event. It is the attachment behind the event. The Stoic reversal is not stop caring. It is care more wisely. Care about your character. Care about your effort. Care about whether you are honest, disciplined, and grounded. But stop building your emotional stability on outcomes you do not own. Because the moment your peace depends on what you cannot command, anxiety becomes inevitable. The deeper freedom begins when you say, I can participate fully without trying to possess the result. I can love without controlling. I can act seriously without demanding certainty. That is the reversal. You do not become calmer by gaining more control over life. You become calmer by needing less control from it. 5. Real-life example. Imagine this. You send a message to someone you care about. You read it twice before hitting send, making sure every word sounds right, calm, thoughtful, not too much, not too little. Then, nothing. Minutes pass, then hours. And your mind quietly starts building stories. Maybe they're upset. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe you should have worded it differently. Maybe you're being ignored. You check your phone again and again. Not because anything changed, but because you're trying to regain a sense of control. Now pause for a second. What are you actually trying to control here? Their response? Their mood? Their priorities at that moment? None of those belong to you. But your mind keeps reaching anyway, trying to close the gap between uncertainty and comfort. And the more you reach, the more restless you feel. Another example. You prepare for something important, a meeting, a presentation, a decision. You go over every detail in your head. trying to anticipate every possible outcome. What if it goes wrong? What if they don't like it? What if this changes everything? So you rehearse, you adjust, you second guess. And by the time the moment arrives, you're not just present, you're carrying the weight of 10 imagined versions of reality. That pressure doesn't come from the moment itself. It comes from your attempt to control every version of it. In both situations, the pattern is the same. You're not just experiencing life as it happens. You're trying to manage how it should happen. And that creates tension where there didn't need to be any. Because the truth is, the message was already sent. The meeting will unfold in real time. People will respond in ways you cannot fully predict. And when you try to control those parts, you don't gain certainty. You lose peace. 6. Stoic shift. So what does the shift actually look like in real life? It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like a sudden breakthrough. Most of the time, it's quiet, almost unnoticeable at first. It begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I control this?" and start asking, "What is mine to handle here?" That single question changes your posture. Instead of trying to control how someone responds, you focus on how clearly and honestly you communicate. Instead of trying to secure a perfect outcome, you focus on doing your part with care and precision. You begin to separate effort from result. You show up prepared, but you stop rehearsing every possible reaction. You speak your mind, but you stop chasing approval afterward. You make decisions, but you stop punishing yourself for not predicting everything perfectly. This is where a different kind of strength appears. Not the tension of holding everything together, but the steadiness of knowing what you will carry, and what you will not. You still care, you still try, but your energy becomes more focused, less scattered. Because you're no longer leaking attention into things you cannot command. And something subtle begins to change. Moments that used to feel overwhelming start to feel manageable. Not because they're easier, but because you are no longer fighting them on two fronts: the situation itself, and your demand that it be different. You allow space for uncertainty without immediately trying to close it. You let conversations unfold without scripting every line. You accept that some discomfort is part of being fully engaged with life. This is not about lowering your standards. It's about aligning your standards with reality. You still aim to do things well. You still take responsibility seriously. But you stop expecting life to remove all friction before you can feel at ease. And over time, that shift creates something more sustainable than control. It creates trust. Not in outcomes. Not in other people behaving a certain way. But in your ability to meet whatever happens with clarity and composure. 7. Final impact. At some point, you begin to notice a quiet shift. The things that once pulled you into tension don't have the same grip anymore. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you're no longer trying to control every outcome. You still show up, you still care, but there's less urgency to force things into place. A delayed response no longer defines your worth. An unexpected turn no longer feels like something is going wrong. It simply feels like something is happening. And that difference matters. Because when you stop demanding certainty from life, you create space to actually experience it. You listen more fully. You act more clearly. You recover faster when things don't go your way. There's a steadiness that begins to grow. Not loud, not dramatic, but reliable. You trust your ability to respond, instead of trying to predict everything in advance. And over time, that trust becomes your anchor. Not control over life, but stability within it. If this reflection resonated with you, take a moment to share your thoughts below. What's one thing you're ready to let go of? And if you want to keep building this mindset, subscribe to Legacy of Thinkers. If this reflection resonated with you, continue the practice tomorrow.